When most people think of World War II, they picture brave soldiers charging across battlefields, powerful tanks rolling through destroyed cities, and fighter planes filling the skies above Europe. History books usually focus on famous generals, powerful leaders, and the military victories that changed the course of the war. But behind every battlefield and every victory was another story that remained hidden for decades. It was the story of millions of courageous women whose sacrifices were almost forgotten by history. Women who became spies, resistance fighters, codebreakers, nurses, engineers, pilots, and factory workers. Their bravery, intelligence, and determination played a vital role in helping the Allies win the war. Yet many of their names were never recorded, and their achievements were rarely recognized. For generations, their stories remained buried inside secret government files, forgotten letters, old photographs, and family memories. Today, we are uncovering those forgotten stories and giving these remarkable women the recognition they truly deserve. Before World War II began, life for most women was very different. Society expected many of them to stay at home and take care of their families. Others worked as teachers, nurses, secretaries, or homemakers. Very few could have imagined that they would soon become an essential part of the largest war in human history. When millions of men left to fight on the front lines, entire nations suddenly faced a serious problem. Factories no longer had enough workers. Hospitals quickly became overcrowded with wounded soldiers. Governments urgently needed intelligence officers and communications specialists. Military equipment had to be produced day and night without stopping. Someone had to keep countries running while the war continued. Women answered that call without hesitation. Almost overnight, millions of women stepped into jobs that had once been reserved only for men. They built tanks that rolled across battlefields. They assembled military aircraft. They manufactured millions of bullets and shells. They repaired damaged military vehicles. They worked exhausting shifts with very little rest. Every weapon they built helped soldiers fighting thousands of miles away. Every machine they repaired strengthened their nation's military. The work was dangerous and exhausting. Factory explosions, chemical exposure, and dangerous machinery caused countless injuries and deaths. Despite these risks, women continued working every day. They believed that every hour of production could help end the war sooner. In Britain, another extraordinary group of women joined one of the most secret operations of the war. They became codebreakers. Working inside highly secure facilities, they spent countless hours decoding enemy messages. Every intercepted message had the potential to save thousands of lives. Their work was so secret that even their families never knew what they were doing. Many of these women remained silent for decades because they had promised never to reveal their work. Only years after the war did the world finally learn how important their contributions had been. Across occupied Europe, another kind of hero quietly emerged. Women joined underground resistance movements. They carried secret documents between resistance groups. They smuggled food, medicine, and weapons. They helped escaped prisoners reach safety. Every mission was extremely dangerous. If they were captured, they could be imprisoned, tortured, or executed. Still, thousands of women accepted those risks because they believed freedom was worth every sacrifice. Some disguised themselves as ordinary civilians. Others crossed enemy checkpoints carrying hidden intelligence. A simple handbag could contain maps, coded messages, or secret radio equipment. Every successful mission weakened enemy control. Every failed mission could cost many lives. In occupied France, young women often became resistance couriers because enemy soldiers rarely suspected them. They traveled through villages carrying hidden information inside clothing, baskets, and everyday objects. Their bravery helped countless resistance missions succeed. Meanwhile, hospitals became another battlefield. Military nurses worked under constant pressure. They treated terrible injuries caused by bullets, bombs, and explosions. They performed emergency medical procedures with limited supplies. They comforted frightened soldiers far from home. Many hospitals were attacked during enemy bombing raids. Medical supplies often became dangerously low. Even under impossible conditions, nurses refused to leave their patients. Some stayed inside burning hospitals until every wounded soldier had been safely evacuated. Their courage saved thousands of lives. Women also proved themselves in the skies. Although many countries did not allow women to fight in combat, they served as military pilots. They transported aircraft between bases. They delivered important supplies. They trained new pilots. They flew dangerous missions through storms and difficult weather. Every flight carried serious risks. Mechanical failures could happen at any moment. Enemy aircraft were always a threat, yet these women continued flying without fear. On the Eastern Front, the Soviet Union created all-female aviation units. These women carried out bombing missions against enemy positions. They often flew old wooden aircraft that were slow and lightly armed. To avoid detection, they switched off their engines before reaching their targets. Their planes silently glided through the night before dropping their bombs. Enemy soldiers feared these mysterious pilots and gave them the nickname Night Witches. Their bravery became legendary and proved that courage has no gender. Women also played an essential role at sea. They worked in naval communication centers. They monitored enemy radio signals. They coordinated supply routes across dangerous oceans. Without their communication networks, many military operations would have failed. Every message they transmitted could change the outcome of an entire mission. Yet the people sending those messages often remained unknown. History celebrated famous battles and military leaders. But many of the women who made those victories possible remained invisible for decades. Today, their forgotten stories finally remind us that World War II was not won by soldiers alone, but also by millions of brave women whose courage changed history forever. As the war grew more intense with each passing year, women's responsibilities continued to expand far beyond anything society had ever imagined before the conflict began. They became highly trained radio operators, intelligence analysts, mechanics, translators, communication specialists, and countless other professionals essential to the war effort. Many of these women worked in complete secrecy, carrying out missions that could never be discussed publicly. Their identities were carefully protected because their work was considered vital to national security. If their missions had been discovered by enemy forces, entire military operations and thousands of lives could have been placed at risk. Some exceptionally brave women even parachuted behind enemy lines to support resistance movements. They landed deep inside occupied territories under the cover of darkness, often carrying only the supplies they could fit in a small bag. Using fake identities, forged documents, and incredible courage, they blended into local communities without attracting attention. Every single day they lived with the constant fear of being exposed by enemy soldiers or informants. One small mistake, one suspicious glance, or one unexpected search could cost them their lives. Despite these overwhelming dangers, they continued gathering valuable intelligence without hesitation. They secretly reported enemy troop movements and military strategies back to Allied headquarters. They identified hidden supply routes that kept enemy armies operating. They located secret military installations that later became important targets. Their intelligence allowed Allied commanders to plan successful operations with greater accuracy. Many underground resistance fighters depended entirely on these courageous women. They provided safe houses for escaping soldiers and resistance members. They secretly hid Jewish families from Nazi persecution, often risking their own lives in the process. They delivered medicine, food, and essential supplies to prisoners and civilians living under occupation. They helped organize complex escape networks that stretched across occupied Europe. Every rescue mission demanded extraordinary courage, careful planning, and absolute secrecy. Entire families often risked everything to protect complete strangers they had never met before. If their actions were discovered, they faced imprisonment, torture, or immediate execution. Yet countless women refused to stand aside while innocent people suffered. For them, humanity became stronger than fear. Inside concentration camps, women experienced some of the darkest moments in human history. Millions were imprisoned simply because of their religion, ethnicity, political beliefs, or resistance activities. They endured starvation, forced labor, deadly diseases, and unimaginable cruelty every single day. Yet even inside these horrific places, hope and kindness somehow survived. Women secretly shared their small portions of food with starving children despite being hungry themselves. They comforted the sick and cared for those who had lost all hope. Whenever possible, they protected one another from abuse and violence. These small acts of compassion became powerful acts of resistance against unimaginable cruelty. Simply surviving under such terrible conditions became its own form of victory. Across Asia, women also faced enormous hardships throughout the years of war. Entire villages and communities were destroyed or forced to flee because of fighting. Families often lost their homes, possessions, and livelihoods overnight. Mothers struggled every day to keep their children alive despite severe shortages of food, medicine, and clean water. Their strength, determination, and resilience helped keep countless families together during the darkest years of conflict. Back on the home front, millions of women continued producing enormous quantities of military equipment needed by Allied forces. Factories operated around the clock without stopping for 24 hours a day. Assembly lines rarely paused as workers rushed to meet the growing demands of war. Aircraft rolled off production lines faster than ever before in history. Ships, tanks, engines, uniforms, ammunition, and countless other supplies were manufactured in record numbers. Without this massive workforce, many important military campaigns would have struggled or failed completely. Women's labor became one of the greatest strengths behind the Allied victory. Yet, when the war finally came to an end, another difficult challenge appeared. Millions of soldiers returned home hoping to rebuild their lives. Many governments encouraged women to leave their wartime jobs and return to traditional roles. Society expected life to return exactly as it had been before the war, but the world had changed forever. Women had proven beyond doubt that they could succeed in every profession they entered. They had demonstrated leadership, intelligence, courage, and determination under extreme pressure. They had successfully managed factories, hospitals, intelligence operations, transportation systems, and communication networks. Their extraordinary contributions could no longer be ignored or dismissed. Although recognition came slowly, history gradually began uncovering their forgotten achievements. Historians opened classified government files that had remained secret for decades. Personal diaries revealed incredible stories of bravery that had never been shared publicly. Family letters described sacrifices that had never appeared in official historical records. Photographs hidden inside old family albums brought forgotten faces back into history. Museums around the world began creating exhibitions dedicated to women's remarkable wartime contributions. Schools slowly started teaching stories that previous generations had never learned. Memorials were built to honor women whose names had been overlooked for far too long. Finally, the world began recognizing their extraordinary courage and sacrifice. Today, many of these women are remembered as national heroes in their countries. Their inspiring stories continue to motivate new generations around the world. They remind us that true heroism is not defined by rank, medals, or military uniforms. Sometimes the greatest courage is found in ordinary people making impossible choices during extraordinary times. A nurse refusing to abandon her wounded patients despite enemy bombing. A mother risking everything to protect her children from the horrors of war. A factory worker building aircraft late into the night despite complete exhaustion. A resistance courier cycling through enemy checkpoints while carrying secret intelligence. A pilot flying dangerous missions without expecting fame or recognition. A codebreaker working silently behind locked doors to save countless lives. Each of these women changed history in ways that very few people realized at the time. Their victories were often invisible because they happened far from the battlefield. But without those invisible victories, many famous battles might have ended very differently. The Second World War was not won by soldiers alone standing on the front lines. It was won through the combined efforts of millions of ordinary people working together. Women stood at the very heart of that extraordinary effort. Their determination kept entire nations functioning during humanity's darkest chapter. Their resilience inspired hope when hope seemed almost impossible to find. Their sacrifices saved countless innocent lives across the world. Their intelligence helped shorten the war and reduce further suffering. Their compassion preserved humanity during one of history's cruelest conflicts. Even today, historians continue discovering new letters, documents, diaries, and photographs hidden for decades. Each remarkable discovery reveals another forgotten story waiting to be told. Another hidden hero finally receives the recognition she always deserved. Another family learns the truth about the extraordinary courage of a loved one. History is still uncovering the remarkable stories of these brave women, and perhaps many incredible stories remain hidden inside archives, museums, and private collections around the world, waiting patiently for someone to rediscover them and share them with future generations. Their legacy belongs not only to one nation but to all humanity. Because courage has no nationality, sacrifice has no gender, and true heroism knows no boundaries. The hidden stories of women during World War II remind us that history is always far greater than we imagine. Behind every great victory stood countless unseen heroes whose bravery deserves to be remembered forever. And by telling their stories today, we ensure that their courage, sacrifice, and legacy will never again remain hidden.